He saved New York, fought aliens from another world, and now the hero who has everything can't sleep through a single night. But what happens when the armor that made you invincible becomes the cage you hide inside, and the real battle is the one you can't fight with technology? Comment if you've ever felt like you're barely holding it together, then settle in, because this is a story about falling apart and finding out who you are without the mask. The screen opens on darkness, then a man's voice, Tony Stark's voice, but different somehow, tired, reflective. A famous man once said, "We create our own demons." The image fades in on New Year's Eve 1999, Switzerland. The lighting is all warmth and celebration. Golden chandeliers, champagne glasses catching light, people in elegant evening wear, dancing as fireworks explode outside floor-to-ceiling windows. The camera finds Tony in the crowd, younger, drunk, arrogant in ways that seem almost innocent now. His hair is longer, his smile easier. He's with a woman, moving through the party like he owns it, which in many ways he does. A scientist approaches him, Dr. Maya Hansen, brilliant and beautiful, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who knows she's the smartest person in the room. She pitches him an idea called Extremis, a treatment that could reprogram DNA, heal injuries, unlock human potential. The camera moves in close on her hands as she shows him a holographic model of the human brain, neural pathways lighting up in cascading patterns. Tony is intrigued but distracted, already moving on to the next moment, the next drink, the next thrill. In the background, another man watches this interaction with intense focus. Aldrich Killian, a sweaty, nervous scientist with long, greasy hair and desperate eyes, holding a folder of research like a lifeline. He approaches Tony on a balcony overlooking the Swiss Alps, mountains dark against the fireworks-lit sky. Killian pitches his own idea, Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM, a think tank where the greatest minds can work without restriction. He speaks quickly, passionately, showing Tony papers covered in equations and diagrams. The camera captures Tony's face, polite disinterest mixed with champagne-fueled cruelty. He tells Killian to meet him on the roof in 5 minutes to discuss it further. Killian's face lights up with desperate hope. Tony walks away, already forgetting, heading toward Maya and the party and the countdown to midnight. The camera stays on Killian, alone on the balcony, waiting. We see him standing there as the countdown reaches 0, as fireworks explode, as the new millennium begins, and slowly his hope transforms into something darker. He looks down at his research, then out at the celebration he's excluded from, and something in his eyes hardens into purpose. Cut to the present. The title card appears, New York City, now. But instead of the city, we're in Tony's Malibu workshop in the middle of the night. The lighting is harsh, clinical, all blues and whites from computer screens. Tony stands in the armor assembly area, but he's not building anything. He's just standing there staring at the Mark 42 armor, gold and red plates arranged on a rack, sleek and beautiful and waiting. The camera shows his face in profile, dark circles under his eyes, a tremor in his hands. He looks haunted. The arc reactor in his chest glows through his Black Sabbath t-shirt, a constant reminder of everything that's happened. Jarvis speaks gently, noting it's 3 in the morning, suggesting sleep. Tony ignores this, instead instructing Jarvis to begin work on a new armor variant. The camera pulls back to show the workshop is filled with armor suits, not just 1 or 2 but dozens, each one a different mark number, different configuration. They stand in the shadows like silent soldiers, like an army of Tonys, each one representing a different attempt to feel safe, to be prepared, to control the uncontrollable. He's been building compulsively, obsessively, unable to stop since New York. Upstairs, Pepper Potts sleeps alone in their bed, the vast windows showing the ocean black under moonlight. The camera lingers on her face, peaceful in sleep, unaware of Tony's latest spiral. Then we hear a scream. Tony, having finally tried to sleep, wakes from a nightmare in violent panic, gasping, his hands glowing with repulsor energy. He's wearing partial armor even in bed. Pepper wakes, startled, frightened. The camera captures the moment she realizes his hand is aimed at her, the repulsor charged. Tony immediately powers down, horror flooding his face. He stammers apologies, says he's fine, it was just a dream. But Pepper sits up, turns on the light, and the camera shows her face. She's been patient, has been understanding, but there's fear there now, mixed with exhaustion. She asks what's happening to him. Tony deflects, makes jokes, says he's just working through some things. She doesn't laugh. She looks at him with eyes that have seen too much, that know he's not fine, not even close. On television, news coverage plays constantly. A terrorist called the Mandarin is claiming responsibility for bombings around the world. The camera shows the footage, explosion sites that leave no forensic evidence, victims who seem to combust from the inside. Then the Mandarin himself appears in videos broadcast to every network. He sits in a room decorated with American and Middle Eastern symbols, mixed in intentionally offensive ways. A man with long dark hair, heavy rings on every finger, speaking in an accent that seems to shift and change. He delivers threats in theatrical, almost performative rage, talking about lessons that must be taught, about American sins, about fortune cookies. The camera shows Tony watching this on multiple screens in his workshop, his jaw tightening. The Mandarin is a problem he can understand, an enemy with a face, unlike the cosmic threats that haunt his dreams. His friend Happy Hogan gets caught in one of the bombings. The camera shows Happy outside Grauman's Chinese theater, nervous in the crowd, following someone suspicious. He confronts a man who looks military, scarred, dangerous. The man's skin begins to glow orange from within, heat radiating visibly. Happy realizes something's wrong, tries to back away. The camera captures his face, confusion, fear, realization. The man explodes. The blast is massive, thermal, leaving almost nothing behind. Happy is thrown through the air, landing hard on the concrete. The camera shows him lying there, smoke rising from his clothes, his eyes open but unseeing, blood pooling beneath his head. Emergency responders rush in. The scene is chaos, smoke and sirens, and people screaming. Tony watches the news coverage from his workshop, his face transforming from shock to something cold and absolute. The arc reactor's glow seems to intensify. Or maybe it's just the way the light reflects in his eyes. He holds a press conference. The camera shows him outside the hospital where Happy lies in a coma. The building behind him, modern glass and concrete. Satellite trucks lined up across the street. Reporters cluster around. Cameras everywhere. Tony's wearing sunglasses, but his voice is clear, controlled, dangerous. He gives out his home address on live television, looks directly at the camera, speaks directly to the Mandarin. "My doors are open, come get me." The camera captures Pepper in the crowd, her hand over her mouth, knowing immediately that Tony just made himself a target. Security tries to pull Tony away, but he shakes them off, walks to his car, the arc reactor visible through his shirt like a bullseye. At home, Pepper confronts him. They stand in the living room with its massive windows showing the Pacific, late afternoon sun turning the water copper and gold. She's furious. He didn't consult her, didn't think about the consequences, just acted on rage and trauma. The camera alternates between their faces as they argue, both saying things they don't quite mean, both scared in different ways. Tony admits he can't sleep, that every time he closes his eyes he's back in New York, falling through the wormhole, seeing infinity and darkness, and the emptiness of space. He says the armor is all that makes him feel safe. Pepper responds that she can't be his nurse and his girlfriend, that he needs real help, that hiding in the workshop building suits isn't healing. The camera shows Tony's face. He knows she's right, but he doesn't know how to stop, how to be vulnerable, how to admit that Iron Hero might be broken. Maya Hansen arrives at the door. The camera shows her through the windows, older now but still striking, carrying herself with purpose. She says she needs Tony's help, that people are dying because of extremists, the research she showed him in Switzerland. Before Tony can respond, before he can process this blast from his past, helicopters appear over the ocean. Military attack helicopters, but not American. The camera shows their profiles against the setting sun, weapon systems armed and tracking the mansion. Tony barely has time to react. The first missile hits. The explosion tears through the house. Glass shatters in slow motion, the camera following shards as they spray inward. Tony tackles Pepper and Maya, covering them as the ceiling collapses. Fire and smoke fill the room. Tony shouts for Jarvis to deploy the armor, but there's no time for the full assembly. The Mark 42 deploys in pieces, flying through the destruction to find him. A gauntlet attaches to his hand, a boot to his foot. He's half armored, half exposed when the second missile hits. The camera shows the mansion beginning to collapse, walls cracking, floors tilting. Pepper screams his name. Tony uses the repulsor to blast them towards safety, pushing Pepper and Maya through a doorway into a reinforced section of the house. A support beam falls between them, separating Tony from the women. The third missile hits directly below him. The entire cliff face collapses. Tony falls through his workshop, through floor after floor of his home, armor pieces trying to reach him as everything crumbles. The camera follows his perspective, spinning, tumbling, catching glimpses of his armor collection being destroyed, of his workspace being buried under tons of concrete and steel. He sees Pepper's face through a gap in the debris, sees her reaching for him. Then the ocean rises up to meet him. He hits the water hard, still only partially armored, and the impact drives him deep. The camera shows him sinking through murky water, debris falling around him like snow. Above, his mansion, his sanctuary, his fortress, slides into the Pacific in a cascade of destruction. The camera captures it from underwater, the structure breaking apart as it sinks, furniture and equipment and pieces of armor floating down through shafts of sunlight that penetrate the depths. The armor seals itself around Tony just in time, becoming a submarine, but it's damaged. Warning lights flood the display, power at 2%, life support failing. Jarvis's voice cuts in and out. Tony tries to surface, but the thrusters are damaged. He drifts, sinking deeper, the water getting darker. The camera shows his face inside the helmet, lit only by failing displays, as he gives Jarvis final instructions. Get to Tennessee, find the Mandarin, protect Pepper. His eyes close, the arc reactor flickers, the armor goes dark, powered down to preserve the last battery reserves. Tony drifts unconscious in a metal coffin at the bottom of the ocean, bubbles rising from damaged seals, the camera pulling back to show how small he is in all that darkness, how alone. He wakes in snow. The camera opens on white, snow falling, bare trees, gray sky. The armor lies half buried in a drift beside a rural road, powerless, just metal now. Tony crawls out, gasping from the cold, the arc reactor dim in his chest. He's in Tennessee. Jarvis barely managed to fly them here before complete shutdown. The armor is now dead weight, 200 pounds of useless metal. Tony tries to drag it, can't, finally just sits in the snow beside it, breath misting in the cold air. A kid appears, Harley Keener, maybe 10 years old, with curious eyes and a winter coat that's seen better days. He looks at Tony, at the armor, and asks if that's Iron Hero. Tony, exhausted and hypothermic and traumatized, just nods. Harley asks if he's a mechanic. Tony laughs bitterly and says he used to think so. Harley helps Tony hide the armor in his garage, a cluttered space filled with half-finished projects and a dead father's tools. The camera shows Tony taking stock. No power, no Jarvis, no way to contact anyone. His phone was in the house, his identity, his resources, his armor, all of it stripped away. He's just a man in a small town, with a broken suit and a kid asking too many questions. Harley wants to know about New York, about the aliens, about what it felt like to go into space. Tony deflects, focuses on trying to repair the armor with limited tools and no arc reactor. The camera captures the reversal. Tony, usually surrounded by cutting-edge technology, now working with car batteries and soldering irons. The genius forced back to basics. Meanwhile, the Mandarin broadcasts again. The camera shows the video on Harley's small TV, the Mandarin in his throne room of mixed symbols, this time claiming responsibility for the attack on Tony's house, calling it a lesson. Pepper watches this on every news channel, surrounded by security in a bunker-like hotel room. Her face shows barely controlled terror, not knowing if Tony survived. She's being protected by security forces, but she pushes back against them, demanding to know where Tony is, demanding answers no one can give. Tony investigates the bombing site in Tennessee, the one that brought him here, where a man exploded just like the incident that hurt Happy. The camera follows him to a crater in the ground outside a small-town restaurant, scorch marks radiating outward. Local police have it cordoned off. Tony sneaks close, takes readings with a makeshift scanner he built from Radio Shack parts. He finds traces of extremis in the residue, the same tech Maya showed him in 1999. The pieces start connecting. These aren't bombs. These are people, weaponized, overloaded, exploding when the extremis in their bodies becomes unstable. Harley asks why Tony doesn't just call the other heroes, the Avengers. The camera shows Tony's face. Something painful crosses it. He says they're not available, that he's on his own. The truth, which he doesn't say, is that he hasn't asked, that part of him believes he doesn't deserve their help, that his trauma is his to carry alone. Harley, with the blunt honesty of children, tells Tony he seems sad. Tony deflects with humor, but the camera catches his eyes. The kid isn't wrong. Assassins find them. 3 people arrive at Harley's house, a woman and 2 men, all moving with inhuman grace, their eyes reflecting light strangely. They kick in the door, the camera following them through the small house, searching. Harley hides in a cabinet. Tony, weaponless, is only his genius. He raids the garage for anything usable, a pressure cooker, Christmas lights, ball bearings, batteries. The camera shows his hands working frantically, assembling crude weapons while watching the armor sitting there, beautiful and useless without power. The assassins find Harley. One grabs him, and the camera catches the man's arm beginning to glow orange from inside, heat radiating, the same thermal buildup before an explosion. Tony appears in the doorway wearing the gauntlet and boot from the armor. He jury-rigged them to the car battery, just enough power for one shot. He fires. The repulsor blast hits the glowing assassin, disrupting the thermal buildup, sending him flying back through the wall. The other 2 turn on Tony. Their skin begins glowing, heat distorting the air around them. They're stronger than normal humans, faster, healing from injuries almost instantly. Tony fights them with his crude weapons, Christmas lights wrapped around one's neck, conducting current from the battery. Ball bearings heated on the stove and fired from a makeshift launcher. It's desperate, improvised, nothing like the clean battles in the armor. The camera captures the brutal reality. Tony bleeding from a cut over his eye, breathing hard, reduced to basic survival. One assassin grabs him by the throat, lifting him off the ground. The man's hand glows orange, burning through Tony's shirt. Tony gasps, struggling, fingers scrabbling at the iron grip. Harley appears behind the man, holding a homemade taser Tony built earlier. He jams it into the assassin's back. The electric shock disrupts the extremis process, the glow fading. Tony breaks free, grabs his makeshift explosive, shoves it at the assassin, and runs with Harley. They dive through a window as the house explodes behind them, the camera capturing the blast in the reflection of a nearby car's window, before spinning to show them tumbling through snow, debris raining down around them. They hide in a nearby factory, dark and cold. Tony's injured, his shirt burned, the arc reactor visible and struggling to power itself. Harley asks if he's going to die. Tony considers lying, then doesn't. He says he doesn't know, that the arc reactor is damaged, that without proper tools he can't fix it. But then he looks at the kid, sees the fear, and something shifts. He talks about New York, finally really talks about it. Describes the wormhole, the infinity of space, the certain knowledge that he was going to die. Says he hasn't been the same since, that he keeps building armor because it's the only thing that makes him feel less small, less fragile. The camera holds on both their faces in the darkness, lit only by the dim blue glow of the failing arc reactor. Harley asks why he even goes out there if it scares him so much. Tony pauses, and the camera moves in close on his eyes as he realizes he doesn't have an answer. He calls Pepper from a payphone using quarters Harley scrounged. The camera shows Tony in the phone booth, snow falling outside, his breath fogging the glass. Pepper's voice breaks when she answers, relief and anger mixing. She thought he was dead. Tony apologizes, really apologizes, for the danger he put her in, for not being there, for all of it. He tells her he loves her, says it clearly, no deflection. She says it back, and for a moment they're just two people who need each other, separated by half a country and circumstances neither can control. Tony tells her to stay safe, to trust Maya, but be careful. He hangs up before she can protest, the camera holding on his hand on the phone receiver, reluctant to let go of that connection. Maya, protected with Pepper, reveals more about Extremis. The camera shows them in a secure room, Maya pacing while Pepper listens. Extremis was meant to heal, to help wounded soldiers regrow limbs, repair brain damage. But the formula is unstable. 1 in 1,000 subjects stabilizes. The others eventually overheat and explode. Someone is using people as test subjects, building an army of enhanced soldiers while covering up the failures as terrorist bombings. Pepper asks who would do that. Maya's face shows shame, guilt. She says his name, Aldrich Killian. The camera shows Pepper's face, the name meaning nothing to her. While in Tony's memories we flash back to that New Year's Eve, to the desperate scientist left waiting on a rooftop, ignored and dismissed. Killian is no longer that desperate man. The camera shows him now, in a pristine office overlooking Miami, all glass and steel and modern art. He's transformed, built, handsome, moving with predatory confidence, his hair perfect, wearing suits that cost more than most cars. His company AIM is massively successful, government contracts worth billions. He meets with military officials, demonstrating extremist subjects who can heal bullet wounds in seconds, who can lift cars, who glow with internal heat. The camera captures the officials' faces, fascinated, hungry for this power. Killian smiles, but there's something cold in it, something that remembers being powerless and invisible, and dismissed. Tony tracks Killian's operation to a compound in Miami. Using Harley's help, the kid is good with computers, better than most adults. Tony identifies the location where the Mandarin films his videos. It's heavily guarded, surrounded by walls and armed security. Tony has no armor, no weapons, no resources. The camera shows him standing across the street, just a man in borrowed clothes, trying to figure out how to infiltrate a fortress. He goes in through the landscaping service, hiding in a truck, slipping past guards through pure confidence and improvisation. The camera follows him through the compound, ducking between buildings, picking locks with tools made from a paperclip and a credit card. He finds the Mandarin's filming room. The camera shows him approaching the door, hearing voices inside, the theatrical accent of the Mandarin giving another speech about lessons and punishment. Tony kicks in the door, prepared for anything except what he actually finds. The Mandarin sits on his throne, but he's wearing a football jersey and holding a beer. The accent is gone. His whole demeanor is different. Relaxed, confused, a little drunk. The camera holds on Tony's face as comprehension slowly dawns. This isn't the Mandarin. This is Trevor Slattery, a failed British actor, reading scripts and playing a role. The terrorist that has terrified the world, that has claimed responsibility for dozens of deaths, is completely fake. Trevor, oblivious to the danger, complains about the dialogue, about the long hours, about having to wear the uncomfortable rings. Tony stares in disbelief, his entire understanding of the threat reshaping. The Mandarin is a performance, a false flag, a cover story to hide the extremist failures as terrorism. Killian invented a villain to distract from his own experiments. The camera captures Tony's expression, a mix of relief that the threat isn't what he thought, and fury at the manipulation, at the way fear has been weaponized. Guards burst in, Killian's enhanced soldiers, their eyes reflecting light, moving with inhuman speed. Tony fights them with whatever's available, furniture, props from Trevor's videos, his own desperate ingenuity. But without the armor, he's overmatched. They corner him against the wall, their hands beginning to glow. The camera shows Tony's face, calculating, knowing he's out of options. Then the wall explodes. The Mark 42 armor smashes through, finally powered by the small arc reactor Tony managed to repair in Harley's garage, flown here remotely by Jarvis. Pieces of armor fly through the air, assembling onto Tony in rapid sequence. The camera captures it from multiple angles, the satisfaction of watching the armor come together, the transformation from vulnerable man to protected warrior. The faceplate closes, the eyes light up. Tony's voice through the speakers. Now we're talking. He fights through the compound, but there are too many enhanced soldiers. The armor takes damage, repulsors sputtering, joint servos grinding. These aren't normal enemies. They can take repulsor blasts and heal, their glowing hands melting through metal when they connect. Tony realizes he needs help, needs more than one armor. He calls them all. The camera shows a spectacular sequence. Armors launching from the underwater ruins of his mansion, rising from the ocean like metallic dolphins, water streaming off their surfaces. Dozens of them, every variant he built during his obsessive months of building, flying in formation toward Miami. The sky fills with Iron Hero armors, a personal air force, each one remotely controlled by Jarvis. The battle erupts across the compound. Multiple armors fighting multiple enhanced soldiers, repulsors and thermal energy clashing in brilliant flashes. The camera sweeps through the chaos, one armor specializing in heavy assault, another in speed, another designed for stealth, now revealing itself as it strikes. Tony controls the Mark 42 directly while coordinating the others, Jarvis helping manage the tactical situation. It's overwhelming, beautiful, a display of technological might, but also desperate. Armors are being destroyed, ripped apart by glowing hands, exploding when thermal attacks overload their systems. For every 2 enemies they take down, Tony loses an armor. Killian reveals himself, stepping out onto a catwalk above the battle. He's shirtless and his entire body begins to glow from within. Orange and yellow like molten lava is flowing through his veins. He's made himself the ultimate extremist subject, completely stabilized, powerful beyond any of his soldiers. The camera shows him in full thermal state, his skin glowing, the metal catwalk beneath his feet melting, heat radiating in visible waves. He looks down at Tony and smiles. This is revenge for that rooftop in Switzerland, for being dismissed, for being nothing. Now he's everything. He drops into the battle. The camera follows him landing among the armors, his glowing hands tearing through them like paper. He moves with terrifying speed, stronger than anything Tony's designed for. When he punches an armor, his fist goes through completely. When he grabs one, it melts. Tony hits him with repulsors and Killian just walks through them, the energy absorbed by his thermal state. He grabs the Mark 42 and Tony can see on his display the armor's exterior temperature rising to critical levels. Killian rips the faceplate off, exposing Tony's face. They're eye to eye, Killian's glowing orange, Tony's reflected blue from the arc reactor. Killian asks if Tony remembers Switzerland, if he remembers leaving him on that rooftop. Tony with typical timing says he remembers an annoying guy with a bad haircut. Killian throws him. Tony flies through the air, crashes into scaffolding, the armor sparking and failing. He crawls out of the damaged suit, hurt, the arc reactor in his chest flickering. Killian approaches, taking his time, savoring this. Other armors try to intervene but he destroys them almost casually. The camera shows Tony's perspective, looking up at this glowing figure, backed by fire and destruction, seemingly unstoppable. Tony reaches for another armor piece but Killian steps on his hand, bearing down. Tony's face contorts with pain. Then Pepper arrives. The camera shows her running through the chaos, somehow escaped from protective custody, finding her way here. She screams Tony's name. Killian turns toward her, interested, recognizing her from surveillance. He releases Tony and moves toward Pepper instead, the ultimate way to hurt Tony Stark. The camera captures Tony's face, horror, rage, trying to get up and failing. His body broken, his armor destroyed, watching helplessly as Killian reaches for the woman he loves. Killian grabs Pepper, lifts her off the ground. She struggles, hitting him, but it's useless against his enhanced strength. He holds her over the edge of the catwalk, looking back at Tony. Says something about taking everything, about making Tony feel what it's like to lose. Tony screams her name. Killian drops her. The camera follows Pepper falling, her face showing fear and then strange determination. She doesn't scream. She twists in the air, and as she falls toward the flames below, something happens. Her skin begins to glow. Not as bright as Killian's, but unmistakable. Orange light ripples across her arms, her face. She lands in fire that should kill her, and instead she rises through it. The camera captures Tony's face, confusion, hope, disbelief. Maya, in her final act before dying from wounds sustained in the earlier battle, injected Pepper with a stabilized version of Extremis, using her own body's perfected formula. Pepper is now enhanced, powerful, burning with internal fire. She emerges from the flames and goes after Killian. The camera follows the fight, Pepper now matching his strength, trading blows that crack concrete. Killian is surprised, then delighted by the challenge. They grapple, two glowing figures in the darkness. Tony uses the distraction to crawl to a partially functional armor, getting enough pieces on to join the fight. Together he and Pepper coordinate like they coordinated the business, like they've coordinated their lives. Tony hits Killian with repulsors, staggering him. Pepper follows up with strikes enhanced by thermal energy. The camera spins around them, capturing the flow of combat. Killian won't go down. He's been at this longer, is more stable, more powerful. He grabs Tony's arm, melting through the armor plating toward flesh. Tony screams. Pepper tries to pull Killian off, but he backhands her across the space. She hits a wall hard. Tony with his free hand fires a repulsor directly into the arc reactor in Killian's chest. Yes, Killian built himself one too, another echo of Tony's design. The reactor cracks. Killian's thermal glow becomes unstable, flickering, parts of him cooling while others burn hotter. He's overloading. Tony tells Jarvis to activate the clean slate protocol. All remaining armors converge on their position. The camera shows them coming from every direction, what's left of Tony's collection, flying toward this one target. They hit Killian in sequence, each one at full speed, becoming missiles, sacrificing themselves. Explosions bloom in rapid succession, each armor detonating on impact. Killian staggers under the assault, his body trying to heal, trying to stabilize, but there's too much damage. His thermal state goes critical. He glows white-hot, screaming, and then explodes in a massive thermal detonation that rocks the entire compound. The blast clears. Pepper stands at the epicenter, glowing but intact, protected by the extremists in her system. She looks at her hands, at the power flowing through them, confused and frightened and awed. Tony approaches, his armor completely destroyed now, just a man in shredded metal plates. He touches her face gently. She's burning hot, but he doesn't pull back. The camera shows both of them, lit by her glow, survivors of something neither fully understands yet. Later, much later, Pepper undergoes treatment to remove the extremists from her system. Maya's notes included the stabilization formula and the removal process. The camera shows her in a medical facility, Tony holding her hand, as the glow fades from her skin, leaving her normal again, human again. She looks relieved. Tony looks thoughtful. He records a message for Pepper, voiceover, while the camera shows him sitting in the ruins of his workshop, just part of the structure still accessible above the waterline. He talks about how he's been hiding, how he let the armor become his identity because he was afraid of not being enough without it. Says he finally understands that he isn't the armor, that the armor was something he built, but who he is exists without it. The camera pans across the destroyed suits, the remnants of his obsessive building, each one representing a different fear, a different attempt to feel safe. He has surgery, a real surgery, finally removing the arc reactor from his chest. The camera shows him on the operating table, counting backward from 10 as anesthesia takes hold. We see the procedure in abstract flashes, light, tools, careful hands working, then Tony waking up, reaching for his chest, finding only bandages, no glow. No pulsing blue light, just flesh and healing tissue. He looks at his reflection in a surgical tray, sees himself without the reactor for the first time in years. The camera holds on his face. There's loss there, but also freedom. The final sequence shows reconstruction. Malibu mansion being rebuilt, workers everywhere. Tony working with Harley remotely, mentoring the kid, sending him boxes of equipment and tools. Pepper and Tony together in a hotel room overlooking the construction, planning not just the house but their lives, actually talking about the future instead of hiding from it. Tony visits Happy in the hospital, finds him awake finally, recovering. They don't say much, just sit together, the friendship needing no words. Tony stands at the edge of the cliff where his house is being rebuilt. The Pacific stretches out before him, endless and blue under clear sky. He holds the arc reactor in his hand, the one from his chest, now just a piece of technology, just a thing he made. He looks at it for a long moment, the camera moving in close on the device, still beautiful, still pulsing weakly with stored energy. Then he turns and throws it into the ocean. The camera follows its arc, watches it disappear into the waves, a piece of his past sinking into darkness and depth. Let go. The voiceover continues. Tony talking about moving forward, about PTSD being a process not a moment, about learning that asking for help isn't weakness. He says the mechanic never stops tinkering, but maybe he tinkers for different reasons now. The camera shows him in a new workshop, not in the house but separate, smaller, healthier. He's working on something, just his hands and tools, no armor in sight. Pepper brings him coffee, kisses the top of his head, stays to watch him work. They talk about something mundane, laugh about something small. The camera pulls back slowly, showing them through the workshop window, just two people in love, building a life together, the armor put away but not forgotten. Final shot. Tony's old basement workshop, flooded and dark underwater. The camera descends through the depths, through murky water, finding the remains of dozens of armors scattered across the ocean floor. They're broken, corroded, half buried in sand, looking like ancient artifacts from some fallen civilization. But the camera finds one more thing. The original Mark I armor, the crude suit from the cave, somehow preserved in a waterproof case. It sits there in the darkness, a reminder of where everything started, of the moment Tony Stark chose to be more than what he was. The camera lingers on that armor, that first desperate attempt at salvation, and through voiceover Tony says the final line, "I am Iron Hero." The screen fades to black on that statement, not as an introduction this time, but as acceptance. Not that the armor defines him, but that what he built, what he became, is a part of who he is. The man and the armor, separate but connected, both necessary, both real. In the darkness after the fade, we hear the sound of a repulsor charging, a familiar hum of power building, and we know that even though Tony has put the armor aside, even though he's healing and moving forward, when the world needs Iron Hero again, he'll be ready. Not because he has to be, not because he's hiding inside metal, but because he chooses to be. And that choice made from health instead of fear makes all the difference. He saved New York and fought aliens from another world. But the real battle was learning that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about choosing to put yourself back together, piece by piece, and discovering that the most powerful thing you can build is a life worth living outside the armor.